Time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
All right, let's get into our Bob's Take segment for this week. And, Bob, I want to kick it off by getting your thoughts on a subject that we talk way too much about on this show, and that's Vontaze Burfict and his detrimental behavior to the league. Last Sunday, he was kicked out of the game against the Titans for making contact with an official. And looking at what happened, if you just look at just that part where he sort of pushed the official's arm out of the way, maybe you could say they overreacted a bit because of, his reputation. But take into account, 2 plays earlier, he was called for a personal foul for a late hit on DeMarco Murray. And then when you really look at the video, it shows Burfict repeatedly stepping on the arm of Titans offensive lineman Brian Schwenke. So just prior to that ejection. So, Bob, how much does the NFL need to see? How much more do they need to see before we get rid of this guy?
I don't know about you, Chris. I was done with this guy a couple incidents ago. It's crazy because you and I, we try to keep it on the positive side with the spotlight on the positive on the end of the show. And again, when we have to bring up this kind of stuff and a knucklehead like this, it really is depressing at times. But again, all I can pretty much say, Chris, is your reputation precedes you, and that goes for anybody at any age and every aspect of life. And I'm hearing a lot of people being an apologist for him, saying, like you said, maybe they have less of a they don't let this guy do too much without getting him away anymore. They think they're coming down on this guy too tough. Well, I mean, you as a Steeler fan, Chris, you remember the headhunting of Antonio Brown and all these other issues. It seems like he can't hold his temper and keep it together. And some guys can, get that enthusiasm and that talent that he does possess, and they can channel it. But obviously his emotions, especially when he's playing the Ravens and the Steelers in division games, the guy is totally out of control. And you're right, how he's not suspended or how he's still in the league is beyond me. His illegal hits are piled up ridiculous. I don't know how many illegal things you can do, Chris, and still keep your job in any other profession. Think about that. So, again, and we're not looking at a suspension here. I don't know what else to tell you, Chris. We've gone through the Pac-Man Jones thing with Cincinnati, and this guy is just it's not even an embarrassment to the organization. It's an embarrassment to the NFL now because he's still playing.
Yeah, and I can't agree more, with you, Bob, than that. For crying out loud, I just don't know how much more the league is going to, continue to look the other way, and I don't understand why they want to continue to look the other way, for the things that he's done. I mean, for crying out loud, this guy is, to your point, Bob, he's bad for the Bengals, he's bad for the league, he's bad for his, peers. I mean, everybody, right, that plays in the NFL, they're all essentially peers. There's just no other word for him than bad. And, boy, I sure wish Roger Goodell would hurry up and just say, you know what, enough is enough with this guy. You're out. And don't even bother to apply for reinstatement. You're out. Go find another job somewhere else doing something else because we don't want somebody like you as a part of our league. So hopefully that comes down before too long. Bob, something else I want to get your thoughts on are the Dallas Cowboys. And really, where do the Cowboys go from here? The Falcons dominated them last Sunday, winning 27-7. It was their first game without Ezekiel Elliott in that 6-game suspension. 5 more to go. They're 5-4 now, looking at a matchup this Sunday night against the 8-1 Eagles. So, Bob, what's your take? How nervous should Cowboy fans be looking at 5 more games without Zeke?
You got to be pretty nervous, Chris. I'm not going to say Elliott doesn't mean a lot to that team. Obviously, his stats last year were off the wall and very important guy, obviously, to that team. But they have an awful lot of talent on that team. The running game, especially, you have a running guy, a quarterback that can run. You have a guy like Alfred Morris on that bench, Chris, who's still averaging about 7 yards per carry, and he has carried an incredible load in the past. And obviously they have an incredible receiving core. I mean, this is a very talented offensive team, Chris, and I kind of scratched my head. You know, they had that 3-game win streak, knocking off Kansas City, who at the time was one of the best teams in the league, and you had a good feeling about it. And now it's like, my goodness, and now it's almost like Dallas Cowboy fans are taking the whole Zeke Elliott thing as an excuse to tank now. I just don't know where they're going right now. Their defense is not that bad, Chris, you know, and they do score. It's just they have hiccups every time, and I don't know. It's just inconsistency with that team. The talent is there, and putting even Elliott aside, they're up, down. They have little, you know, 2 wins, 3 losses, vice versa. Something I didn't expect from a team like this. But, again, that's a big game this week, obviously. 3 games behind Philadelphia now, Chris, and a win put them at 500 at this time of the season might really kill their playoff chances. So a big week for them, but that's that E word, enigma. They're tough to call.
Bob, one more, and I want to get your thoughts on the Broncos. Broncos are 3-6 now. They've lost 5 in a row. In their last 2 games, Bob, they've been outscored 93-39. And we thought, you know, that they could struggle this year a little bit on offense, but their defense would certainly keep them in games. And, well, you know, not so much lately. What's your take on what's going on in Denver?
That's exactly right. When we were talking at the beginning of the season, Chris, we were thinking, okay, defensively, Von Miller, all those guys, they're going to be okay. You know, you're bringing in Vance Joseph, Chris, who's a defensive-minded coach, and that does not bode well for him that they've given up 239 points, which is the most in that division and one of the highest totals in the AFC. But we hit it right with their offense, Chris. 166 points they've scored. That's almost in Miami territory. It's awful. I was never a big Simeon fan. He just didn't have it. If you watched a few of his games at the beginning of the year, he was awful. And Oswald, you know what the thing is, Chris? They have 2 backup quarterbacks. That's what they have. And that never bodes well. And that's why they are 3-6. And it's unfathomable, but very possible, Chris, that they're going to finish last in that division. How 1 year can change things, right?
Indeed. All right, folks, there you go. That is Bob's take for this week.